Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Go to Bowl fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, welcome. I promised myself I would show this on the post game today. Welcome to the Victory Monday episode. Yeah, baby! Shout out to Karen for the t-shirt. My, oh my, this was a good game, dude. The Chargers, it feels like it was more or less like a get-right game. Does it not? It kind of feels like that way to me, right? Finally, it feels like Justin Herbert's out there having some fun. Right. Finally, it feels like, hey, we're leaning into some of the strengths of this team via the quarterback. The offense, it literally was like a flip was switched in like the late third, early fourth quarter. Like, holy crap, here come the Bolts. You got McConkey going crazy. You got the Chargers defense holding the Saints to under 10 points. You got a whole lot of good coming out of this game. And I think for the most part, you got a lot of things that you learned from this game on how you need to proceed going forward. This run game thing that we're trying to build, I will get there. I think we will get there. But right now, you got to lean into the strength of the offense, which is Justin Herbert. Lad McConkey, that connection, it's been sparked. I think we got a wide receiver one on this team all of a sudden, right? You got maybe offensive line issues that you got to sort out. But most of all, I think you got a decision to be made here in the next week in terms of bringing in a player via trade. To help out the situation for the Chargers this season, build something towards the next season. We had a lot of stuff to talk about. It's going to be a fun one today, guys. Congratulations to the Chargers. Big win this week, and one that I think is going to help propel the Chargers forward for the rest of the season. Feels different. This win feels different. Before we do kick things off, man, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Newcomers, check out the Russell Wilson free pick for Monday Night Football. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification. Helps me out a lot. I'm going to send you guys over to my Bleacher Report episode from this morning because we talked a lot of good stuff there, and I think you guys are going to bring, it's going to bring a lot of cool insight from this game. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history.
Go to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Welcome to this Victory Monday edition of the show on Bleacher Report. Dudes, we got ourselves a fun breakdown for today. The Chargers versus the Saints yesterday offered a lot of insight on where the team currently sits, where are some of the areas that they need to continue building, but more so, what our chances are at looking at a nice result of the 2024 season. First, crack at it for Jim Harbaugh in the NFL for a very long time. And more so, what this team is currently and how we get to where we want to be built up towards in the future. What I mean by that is, of course, is this a running team? Is this a defense-dominant team? Is this a Justin Herbert team? All of that in today's episode. Let's go ahead and start off with the result of this game. The Chargers taking down the New Orleans Saints 8-26. Funny enough, in my prediction video for this game, I actually had the score being 9-27, so we got pretty close to that one. And that's because of a couple of different factors. And this really is important information to lay down the expectations for this game, because it was, in my opinion, an important game to get a couple of things right. For one, the Chargers defense needs to continue proving that they are for real. I do think the Chargers defense has done enough up to this point for everybody in the league to say, hey, watch out. You're not scoring a lot of points versus the Chargers. And with this team in particular, the New Orleans Saints, they were walking in with a young quarterback, an unsure quarterback situation. They ended up benching Spencer Rattler and bringing in the other quarterback, Hayner, later in the game. We weren't expecting to see a huge performance by them in terms of scoring. And obviously the Chargers did their job, only allowing 8 points, under 10 points. Man, I think at this point, I don't have the updated metrics in front of me, but before this game, the Chargers were the number one team in the league in terms of points scored. I think at this point, and I think that was something like 17 points a game. I think it's updated to somewhere around 13 now. points per game, which is absolutely insane. The Chargers are having a huge season defensively, and they did what they had to do versus this particular team. I think, again, it's not just good enough, in my opinion, to win versus the Saints, given their situation, right? They can be a good team, and earlier in the season, they did look like a pretty good team. But, the situation changed. The Chargers, when they find teams in these situations, they can't just beat them. They gotta, in lack of a better term, squash them, so to speak. And they did that with the Carolina Panthers. I said, it's not enough to win that game. You got to squish them. You got to prove that you're for real. And they did it again with the New Orleans Saints, who had the rank 32 defense in the league. Young quarterback, lots of injuries. Of course, they had some of those guys coming back in this game. I think an 8-26 score really does prove to me that they are very capable. And the defense did their job. I should also say at 26 points, the offense certainly did their job. As mentioned, the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. The Chargers, who have really struggled this season, had me very worried going into this game. Not because I didn't think they couldn't figure it out, but because previously they had played the Cardinals, who also did not have a pretty good defense. And if the Chargers struggled in that game and then followed it up with the worst defense in the league and also struggled in that game versus the Saints, we would have a serious problem on our hands for the rest of the year. An offense that can't score versus the worst defense would surely result in a very failed experiment for Justin Herbert and company on offense for the remainder of the year. Now, that didn't end up happening. The Chargers did go out there, and by my standard, which at the top of the game in my live broadcast, I said, hey, dudes, if the Chargers don't post at least 21 points this week, we are in trouble. Lo and behold, they come in and they figure it out, especially in the second half this week, posting 26 points. I think that it did bring a lot of my anxieties, a little bit of ease for the rest of the season. Does not mean that we have finished our work. It does not mean that we don't have work to do in improving the roster and the Chargers, efficiency on offense. But I think at a very baseline, we have something to build on. We're going to talk more about how the Chargers can improve their odds on offense going forward. Now, with all that groundwork laid out, the Chargers are still very much so alive. A 4-3 team with an awesome defense. Justin Herbert at quarterback, a little bit of momentum. Some people saying they don't know where the season sits, what they want in terms of expectation, if they should, throw in the towel offensively because we've just been so bad. I'm telling you right now, because of all the factors I laid out in terms of awesome defense, Herbert, and first-year Harbaugh and all that stuff, this season is very much so worth fighting for. It wouldn't be the first time that Jim Harbaugh has a quick one-season turnaround for any organization. He still is very capable of helping out the offense and turning it into what we're all hoping it could be for the Chargers. But it's going to take a little bit of changing of perspective and method of attack, so to speak, because the Chargers, who started the season wanting to be this run-aggressive team, really resemble what a Jim Harbaugh squad has looked like for so long, that to me needs to shift a little bit, at least for this year, right? Not to say you can't eventually get to that point, but that is not what the Chargers currently reside in terms of strength. Their strength right now comes in our first segment, the Justin Herbert effect, right? Justin Herbert is firmly back. Okay, the last, I would say, 3 weeks have really proven that to me. And of course, not scoring a touchdown versus the Cardinals is not going to help your case too much if you're Justin Herbert. But you know what? He did throw for 350 yards, right? This last game, he threw for, 280 yards. I think the previous game of the Chiefs, I do believe it was over 200 yards as well. The first couple of weeks of the season really made me think that, man, Justin Herbert's going to take a back seat. It's going to be a completely new offense. He wasn't even throwing for 200 yards a game. That all changed once the Chargers started leaning back into Justin Herbert a little bit. I would assume because the run game hasn't quite solidified in the way that they had hoped at the top of the season, which isn't definitely not a season killer by any means. It's just taking them some time to figure out, hey, we got to kind of shift gears here a little bit. Let's get the ball back in the hands of Justin Herbert. Let him do his thing. Despite the lack of weapons, right? Despite the lack of familiarity he has with his receivers, we got to trust that Justin Herbert can figure it out. And so far, the last 3 games have told me, hey, little by little, he is slowly but surely and persistently finding his way back to form. Because now I'm starting to see Justin Herbert of old. Now I'm starting to see Justin Herbert, from his rookie season and last year, et cetera, et cetera. He's starting to sling the football, which is especially impressive considering he doesn't have Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, who everybody forgets was an awesome receiving weapon. It's a fresh new cast of receiving options for the Chargers and Justin Herbert. And this game in particular brings up my enthusiasm and excitement and hype that Justin Herbert has finally found his footing with the new receiving core. He didn't even have Quentin Johnston and Hayden Hurst in this game, and yet he's throwing for, 250, 270 yards. And in particular, it feels like he found comfort with the number one receiver again in Ladd McConkey. Our next segment right here, dude. This is a hugely important aspect for the Chargers and the offense going forward, okay? By the way, thank you for the comment, Sick Jersey. This is the Halloween Chargers jersey for this show. Anyway, Ladd McConkey. This dude went off. Was it 111 yards, 2 touchdowns yesterday? Oh my. Did the Chargers get themselves a weapon? And I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back. If you guys watch my channel, especially back in the offseason, I was pounding the table for this kid, man. I was like, this is the dude. If the Chargers, and actually, it's really crazy. You'll see on my Twitter, I posted a clip of it. I said, if the Chargers end up drafting Joe Alt at 5, they need to go after Ladd McConkey in the second round, maybe even trade back into the first round to get this guy, because that is a number one wide receiver. And now finally, halfway through the season, we are starting to see the signs of Ladd McConkey taking that role and running with it. Because this game, dude, it blew the top off of my expectations for him this week, which I did expect him to have a good week, but the way that they used him was so impressive. I'm going to kind of combine this with the next segment because it's actually pretty important, and they do reflect on each other a lot. The next segment was going to be what the Cards and Saints defense taught us, okay? Now, taking a look at the Cards and the Saints defense that we just faced, I noticed a lot of similarities. I noticed a lot of trending themes, if you will, how teams play against the Chargers offense, right? I think a lot of teams understand at that point of the season what they're trying to do, what they're trying to be. They're trying to be this run-first team. They have a lot of weapons that are designed to get the ball in space in terms of receiving and pick up extra yards after the catch. And that requires a lot of space underneath. In the last 2 weeks, I saw a lot of the same thing. Coverage from the opposing defense playing low. And they were playing stubbornly low. The Cards, I was shocked to see when I went back and watched some of the All-22. I was shocked to see how often that they were just, sitting underneath and taking away the check downs and the slants and the mesh routes and everything that Justin Herbert loves in terms of, okay, the first guy's not open, let's go hit one of these dudes. The Cards just wouldn't let that happen. And the Saints came back and did exactly the same thing this week. I noticed a lot of that type of coverage. And you know why that is, in my opinion, as a humble YouTube, Chargers enthusiast? I think the reason for that is because no team right now respects the Chargers deep. They don't respect the Chargers threats in terms of receivers, on the perimeter. They don't respect the Chargers in terms of what the speed can do in terms of getting open deep. There's no reason to play the intermediate or deep part of the field for the most part. And that's opened up a lot of aggressive play style versus the Chargers defensively. Now, what the Chargers did different this week is why this Ladd McConkey performance was so important. And, we're going to sprinkle a little bit of Josh Palmer in there as well, because the fact that the Chargers took these weapons that aren't yet in this season traditionally used to attack the perimeter and attack, deep, and used them in that way and found a lot of success shows me that, hey, they're figuring out how to utilize this part of the field that had, for the most part of the season, has laid dormant. Justin Herbert and Mike Williams, those guys were great together at attacking the perimeter, and it really forced teams to say, hey, we got to back up a little bit. We can't let Mike Williams loose. If it's a 50-50 ball situation, it's not really 50. It's a 60-40. It's a 70-30 chance he comes down with it. We got to respect it a little bit. And that opened up space underneath for Eckler and Keenan Allen, et cetera, et cetera. to generate yards after the catch. And it was a really well, working machine for Justin Herbert in the first, 3-4 years of his NFL career. And the teams just haven't had to worry about that for the Chargers the last, I would say, pretty much all this season. And again, with Ladd McConkey finally becoming a weapon that, hey, dude, watch out. This guy on the sideline, one-on-one, which we saw a few times this game, he could take it the distance. That first Ladd McConkey touchdown, he had no business taking that to the house, right? Justin Herbert puts it beautifully a little bit outside, towards the sideline. Ladd McConkey had led his coverage guy inside a little bit, and that little bit of separation gave McConkey just enough space to snag that thing and chase it to the house, which was just awesome. And that was a perimeter play for the Chargers. And I feel like that worked beautifully because the Saints, who didn't have any pretty good safety help back there, weren't taking the Chargers seriously in terms of their deep game. And Ladd McConkey made them pay for it. And then, boom, you hear that and you feel that and you see that spark of chemistry and trust and development between Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey. And it continues to grow until you see late in the fourth quarter, here comes Ladd McConkey again. Beautiful touchdown in the end zone. Another one-on-one shot. My goodness. I think we found something here, ladies and gentlemen. The Chargers may have themselves a wide receiver one after, 8 weeks of searching. The Bolts got McConkey firmly at the top of their list of dangerous weapons. And that's absolutely something I expected to happen around mid-season with the drafting of McConkey in April. Absolutely fantastic. I also mentioned Josh Palmer, who is finding success there. This is great. Justin Herbert, I feel like is firmly back because he is now attacking that deep part of the field successfully. It's a difference between throwing the ball and getting completions picks and actually getting completions and touchdowns. Now teams have to account for that. Now teams have to back up a little bit. Now teams have to respect the deep ball, and that's just going to create more opportunities for guys underneath. Quentin Johnson is a great weapon underneath. Ladd McConkey can be a great weapon. He is a great weapon underneath. Maybe the tight ends start getting a little bit more involved. Maybe Kamani Vidal, who's a pretty good receiving back, gets a little bit more space as well. That changes everything for the Chargers. The Cards defense, the Saints defense taught me that teams really understood what the Chargers' lack of strength was in terms of perimeter wide receiver. They've been attacking it aggressively, and finally, the Chargers have been able to make them pay for it. Now, is this going to be a trend that we see continue? Possibly. I think Ladd McConkey is very capable on the outside. He doesn't look like a traditional outside receiver, but I do believe you can still continue using him that way, right? But in order to get the best out of these guys and get the most potential out of the receivers you do have, who now we know are very capable, I do believe you need some help here. Okay, and this is something I talked about a little bit last week on Bleacher Report. I talked about a little bit even yesterday on Bleacher Report. You hear me talking about it all the time. I just released a big video about it on my YouTube. The Chargers must be involved in a trade this season. They have to. Before the trade deadline, which is coming up, remember, the 5th of November. The NFL trade deadline is almost here. Okay. The reason I believe the Chargers pretty much have to be buyers here is because now we are starting to find our footing on offense. Ladd McConkey is starting to see some good development, breakout even. Justin Herbert's really coming back into his form. I think the Chargers need to understand that they really are like one, maybe two moves away from really turning the offense around, which a lot of people will say you're never one or two moves away. I would say for this season, you are one or two moves away from finding some serious momentum on offense. And that's because what we saw with Ladd McConkey, the way the Chargers were attacking the deep part of the field and finding success, you can go buy that right now in terms of NFL trade. Deontay Johnson is more than likely going to be moved here in the next week or so. Yeah, in the next week. He's gone. I want the Chargers on the phone with the Panthers on this one. He would be an excellent perimeter Chargers wide receiver. And not only would that help the Chargers in terms of, hey, we got another weapon for Justin Herbert. He's probably good for, at this point of the season, like 500-600 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns, which is great, going forward from now. Not only do you have that weapon, but his presence, the fact that he exists, that speed and deep route running and availability and separation and all the stuff that he brings to the table, that is going to create space for the guys underneath as well. Lad McConkey could start going off. Kind of reminds me of, oh goodness, I'm starting to lose my mind here. Tyler Lockett, when he's got space with the Seattle Seahawks because of DK Metcalf, you see some big plays, man, especially in the past, some big plays from Tyler Lockett. I think the Chargers signing a guy like Deontay Johnson could really benefit them in that department. And like I said, with the Chargers leaning back into Justin Herbert a little bit and finding that success deep and starting to create space and confidence and momentum through the passing game, adding that one extra piece, that one extra element that really unlocks that part of the field for you is going to have a trickling effect for everybody else underneath. And I think they really need that right now. And he's not the only option. Of course, I feel Deontay Johnson is probably the number one option for a lot of wide receiver needy teams, but there really are even more names that could do a lot for the Bolts in terms of bringing that sort of element to the team. Darius Slayton, if you're not looking for, necessarily big physical, 6'4" giant dudes, you can go get Darius Slayton, who, he's not short or anything. He's like 6'1", but he's one of the faster wide receivers you're going to see maybe available for trade. That is one that could certainly help, again, take the top off the defense and force you to respect the deep ball and to open things up underneath. He would be a good trade target. We've heard a little bit of rumor, and it feels like you hear rumor about this every offseason, or I should say even every season. DK Metcalf might be on the move. There was a recent article, or I should say interview, with Eric Williams, an NFL analyst and host. He mentions that DK Metcalf could be, again, theoretically linked to the Chargers because of their connections. He's got Sanjay Lal, the Bolts wide receiver coach, as a connection. The contract for DK Metcalf could be complicated enough where they're willing to move him for pretty good draft capital. Again, that's an expensive one. You're probably talking a second conditional first-round pick to pick up DK Metcalf, which would be insane for the Chargers. A huge system fit and honestly a wide receiver one for this team. But then you got other guys like Mike Williams who aren't a huge commitment, right, in terms of trade. Like, you're talking like a 7th round pick, right? Maybe not even this year's 7th round pick. It would be dirt cheap to get Mike Williams back on this team. A maybe like $2 or $3 million cap hit for the rest of the season. You got another perimeter guy that already has chemistry with Justin Herbert that would demand, the respect of the defense and once again open things up underneath. But perhaps my favorite option for the Chargers, by the way, Mike Williams, if bare minimum, you got to give me Mike Williams. I don't know if I'll be happy if the Chargers sit back and don't trade this season. This is one of those seasons where it's like, you got to do it. The offense is this close, and you got options, many of them in front of you, and you've got resources. 10 or 11 draft picks via compensatory formula. You got $80 million next season in cap. You got to do it. Like, it'll help this year and next year, and also really help you figure out where you are in terms of the team build with one move, right? So I feel like the Chargers must trade. But my favorite trade scenario that we really have been trying to hammer home, at least on my platform and social media and stuff, is the Chargers trading for a tight end. For one, tight end, that position takes a minute to develop. You see a lot of rookies nowadays, which is really cool, right? The Brock Bowerses, the Dalton Kincaids, the Sam Laportas, those guys coming into the league. That's awesome. But you don't see that too often outside of this little anomaly. You know what I mean? For the most part, it takes some time for tight ends to really find their footing in the NFL for whatever reason. And I feel like there's some tight ends that are starting to separate themselves in terms of, okay, they've really started stepping it up, really started figuring it out. And the one that I'm really pushing the envelope for, I'm really pushing the narrative for, is David Njoku. Cleveland Browns, they're dissolving. That cap situation for them next season is horrific. They got a quarterback they have to pay like $80 million all in 1 year, and Deshaun Watson, who may not even play for them. It's a disaster for them. And so at this point, they're probably looking for any and all options to get some money off the books, get some capital back, because the best way to solve your money problems is to bring in rookies who have tiny contracts, and the value in that. And I really think the Chargers, if they were to get on the phone and say, hey, man, David Njoku, we'll throw you a third, which is what I'm seeing a lot in terms of my research and how much he would cost in terms of trade, I would do that in a heartbeat. Because what I'm seeing from David Njoku in this season, and maybe even the second half of last season, when he was playing, he looks like he's making that shift, that turn, that level up, right? To, okay, he's a legitimate top 5, top 3 tight end in football. And you pair that up with Justin Herbert. Oh, just imagine, Bull fam. Just imagine what David Njoku could do for this offense. Because not only is David Njoku a heck of a receiving tight end, which you guys saw that touchdown on Sunday. Oh, he got that guy. Was it Eddie Jackson? Was it Eddie Jackson that was all over him? Whatever. Eddie Jackson, not what he used to be, but he was all over David Njoku. Like there was contact. There was a pass interference penalty that was obviously declined because he brought in the touchdown. David Njoku is an incredibly talented receiving tight end that would pair just beautifully with Justin Herbert. But not only that, he is a highly underrated run blocking tight end as well, which would fit the system and scheme that Jim Harbaugh is trying to create here. You're also getting a player at, in my opinion, for the position, is in the prime of their career. I think he's 28. Tight end can play until like 34, 35, right? You bring that into this system with Justin Herbert, I really feel like you're going to unlock a lot of things for this offense. I feel very strongly about that. We saw Justin Herbert play with Mark Andrews in the very last Pro Bowl that was actually a game, and those two went off. Justin's not had that yet. He had a little bit of Hunter Henry in his rookie season. Outside of that, he's not really had, top shelf tight end talent. Bring me David Njoku. He could be the key to unlocking this whole thing. And he will also help in what you're trying to build in the future. You can sign this man and keep him for until he's 35. I think he's going to produce. I feel that strongly about it. Okay. To help wrap up this video, a couple more points that I wanted to make. The run game is not yet ready. That's definitely something that I've learned the last 2 weeks. Both of these defenses that we've played, the Cardinals and recently the Saints, not great run defenses, some of the worst in the NFL. And the Chargers, despite having two of the best tackles in the NFL, can't run the football very efficiently lately. And it's because the interior of that offensive line is so squishy and so lackluster that they are just busted through everything in terms of pressure and tackle for loss and a lack of run game. It all stems from the interior of that offensive line. Unfortunately, if you were to end the season right now, you would maybe label Zion Johnson a bust, which sucks because the dude showed some potential in his first couple of seasons, but it's just not worked out for him this year. Again, unfortunately, brownie points to him for defending Justin Herbert after a dirty play by Shepard of the Saints. Bradley Bozeman also not panning to be a very good center for this team, ranked as one of the worst centers in football right now. And then, of course, Trey Pipkins, the other guard, who we didn't have huge expectations for anyway, also underperforming. It is not very good. And the Chargers are going to be very big players in building that position in the future. I guarantee it. But again, until we can reach the next offseason, because you're not going to find very many offensive linemen, quality ones at least, to trade for at this point. You could try, but the likeliness of it is very low. It's way more likely you're going to see a wide receiver, tight end, a running back, other skill positions available at this time. But offensive line is something you don't see moved very often. And even if they did bring in a guy right now, it takes a while for that position to solidify and to bring in chemistry and understand, the nuances of how the line has been built up so far. It's just a little too late, in my opinion, to make that sort of move. They'd be spending majority of the rest of the season trying to get in sync with the rest of the guys. That's something that you try and do in the off season. I do believe the Chargers will be players in that area in free agency next year and in the draft, certainly, so they have time to build them up before the 2025 season. But that is something that really is holding us back, and the run game is suffering for it. And that's why leaning back into Justin Herbert is such a good idea. We know that works. We're already seeing success. We're seeing, again, the deep part of the field become unlocked once again, and it's very exciting, right? And of course, I think the Chargers will continue to figure it out on the ground as they do continue, but it's something that is going to need some help in the future. You're going to draft offensive line, but you're also going to be looking at, and this is a little sneak preview for future content, you're also maybe looking for a Chargers RB1 of the future. J.K. Dobbins is good. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's a great running back. I think he's top 10 in a lot of different metrics right now, which is absolutely fantastic. But there is some more that you're probably wanting to do with that position for the future. And this upcoming draft, fellas, is full of RB1s. Like, obviously, Ashton Jeanty, if you can get your hands on him, welcome back. Then, the next LaDainian Tomlinson, welcome to the NFL. You got Trey Henderson, who's a great option. You got Trevor Etienne. You got Quinshon Judkins. You got a lot of options for the Chargers to move in on. And what's the other guy? Ollie Gordon. I love Ollie Gordon's potential with this team too. There's a lot of talent in terms of running back in this class that would mesh really well with the Chargers in the future. So it's okay to say, hey, we need some more time to figure out building this run game. We need a little bit more talent from the running back and interior offensive line, tight end especially as well. But let's lean into the strength of the team on the offense, and that's Justin Herbert. Let's go out there, trade for one more receiving threat, make sure that element of the offense is firing on all cylinders so that energy of the offense can somewhat or at least catch up a little bit to what the defense is doing. That's the last tiny segment for this video. The defense is for real. You do not waste a season where you're ranked number 1 in scoring defense ever. Never, ever do that. It is so rare to have a defense this good. And to waste it while you have a quarterback and Justin Herbert on offense is a sin. You never, ever waste a season that you have a good defense. And the Chargers, who now feel like they are leaning into Justin Herbert's talent. Hopefully they're going to go out there and get him some help. You pair him with this top defense, the rest of the season you could feast. You really could. But it all really depends on how they shift their mindset and how they try and provide more help for Justin Herbert on the offense. Because if you can get that offense to match the energies just a little bit more of the defense, you really have a very dangerous combination that could find a lot of success for the rest of the season. So that's my 2 cents. That's my 2 cents on the game, what we've learned in the past couple of weeks, and where I think the Chargers need to go now. Go get Justin Herbert a receiving weapon today. Joe Ortiz, give me Njoku, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, plenty of options out there in terms of trade that they could pursue that could really get this team back on track and buy you some time to get the pieces to become that run team that you want to be in the future. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. Or should not like and sub, but a follow here on Bleacher Report. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty.